The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is Andre Mayette, your podcast host. Big thanks to Ugo the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today we talk with current Marvel Comics artist for the book Excalibur, Marcus Anthony Toe. Great conversation about his foray into comics, how he got there. It was a really cool chat. Another guy that I connected with pretty instantly. And he's a member of the Raid Studios. I've had other folks that work at Raid Studios in Toronto on the show in the past. And it's always nice to have people from such a prestigious art house that are doing some amazing work out there in the comics world. And I just love talking to people that are part of it because it's a real group of artists. It's really people like-minded, and artists are depending on the artist, they're a unique and interesting bunch. Not always the easiest to organize, but it's nice when a bunch of like-minded people with the drive in the organization and the talent get together and put out amazing work. Almost everybody, well, I won't say almost, because I haven't seen anyone that came out of that studio that I haven't absolutely adored their work. So, and Marcus is one of them. He does some really, really cool stuff. Usually, when I record these, it's a few weeks in advance, but this particular instance, it's kind of caught up. I have a bunch more, so I will be far in advance for the next few, but I am recording this on the Monday before it would air, so it's about a week out. So, things that are happening in the world as it were right now are ongoing, and I am up to date, which is rare. It's rare when I'm doing these that is the case. Christmas is coming. I'm very excited. I'm a big fan of the holidays. On a personal note with my life, I do host trivia regularly, and I think we've talked about that on the show before. One of the venues in which I do it at the Truro Brewing Company is closing, unfortunately, on the 22nd of December. And this is just a reminder that if you have a space in your community, if there's a small business that you like, one that you frequent, you like the staff, you like the owners, just make sure to support them as much as possible. I'm not saying sink all your paycheck into it. I'm not saying spend every minute there. I'm just saying it's easy. There's a lot of stuff going on in the world. And there's a lot of ways you can go get everything you need. I mean, everything's a click of a button on Amazon. You can pretty much have it at your door in a second. But if you want these spaces to survive in your community, you need to support them. And if you don't, they go away. And unfortunately, that's happening to the Truro Brewing Company. It's amazing business. The owner, Jana, and Trish are great. And they make amazing beer. Their product is really fantastic. And I'm sorry to see them go. I will be picking up trivia at a different bar on Sundays, I believe. The Commune, which is the one I host movie nights at, and vinyl nights, and we just did that book fair ad. We did a book fair for grown-ups. I called it the Sibtastic Book Fair, kind of a play on the Scholastic Book Fair. And it was a really fun time. Thankfully, they're going to pick it up, and we're going to get to carry on Sunday afternoons for trivia that way. But it is sad in the way that the Truro Brewing Company is closing. And so just a reminder, especially during the holiday season, support your local businesses. I mean, they will not be there if you don't. And it's easy to say, I'll get to it. But, as John Fogerty said, someday never comes. So, get out there and support it. I hope you're having a great holiday season. I'm getting into the Christmas movies. I'm getting into the Christmas feel. It's starting to snow around here. We got some snow on the ground, so it is feeling a little more festive, a little more holiday. The lights are up. All the presents are bought, wrapped under the tree. And, it's getting festive. It's getting festive up in here, which I'm digging. I might dig out the guitar and play some of my favorite Christmas tunes a little later. Pogues, the Fairy Tale of New York. That's a classic. The Man in the Santa Suit by Neil Hamstead, his version of it, which is originally by, I think it was Fountains of Wayne. So, get in the festive spirit. If you like Christmas, hopefully you do. If you don't, I'm sorry. I know it's a hard time of year, and there's probably something in your past that makes you not like Christmas. Perhaps it's the family matter or something in your life that happened around that time period, and that's always rough. But you know, it's important to remember that it's a time of year that hopefully solicits a little more good cheer amongst people. And if you're, boycott it because of the rampant capitalism, well, I hate to tell you, it's in all of society, not just Christmas. So it's all around you, and you don't have to celebrate Christmas by jumping into that. You can just celebrate it whenever way you want, or you can celebrate it by listening, not talking. You can talk if you want, but I'm not going to hear you. You can celebrate it by listening to my conversation with Marcus Toe. So here he is, current artist for Excalibur, for Marvel Comics, worked on Red Robin, Huntress, a bunch of books over on DC as well, but now he's kind of got a slide plan at Marvel at the time being, and doing some amazing work. So here's my conversation with Marcus Anthony Toe.
Let me see. Hold on.
There you go.
Better?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. No, I was a little sorry, I was a little late. They're doing the blood drive in the town I live in, and I got there and the lineup was like at the door. Normally they do it's all done through the app, but I had one of those fun moments where you're sitting in there waiting to give blood. Like this would be my 45th time, I think. So I was like sitting there watching the woman that I was going to go to. There's a woman at her like in her bench already. At her seat, and that woman was like getting woozy, and she was like getting sick, and then like they had to bring out the wheel thing to put her on, like the stretcher, and they wheeled her off to a corner, and they're sitting with her for a while, and then after they finished, that nurse that was with her was like, "All right, come on over," and I'm like, yeah. And then she took forever to find a vein and all that good stuff. But anyway, I'm done. So
yeah, no, I've been told before that sometimes often women have lower blood pressure.
Yeah.
Because
low iron usually too.
Yeah. So them taking up blood, sometimes they react different than men do.
Yes, yeah. It's funny because usually it's lower iron, and there's a lot of problems with that. In fact, I ran into a girl I knew that was kind of just sitting there, and she was saying she had a problem one time where her iron wasn't high enough to donate a few times. It's never happened to me. Like I gave up eating red meat a few years ago, and I thought that might impact it, but it hasn't. It's still no problem. So.
Oh well, part of it is the monthly thing that women go.
Oh yeah, that would do it too. Yes,
that's true. Their loss of blood and
that is true.
On
yes,
the monthly schedule.
Yeah,
and it depends on how. Yeah, like so. Generally, I mean, I'm no doctor, but my wife tells me because we used to give blood as well, and we kind of obviously COVID. We fell out of that, and I should really go back to it. But yeah, COVID kind of like put a pause to all that stuff, and you just didn't sign up for a while and then But
I'm zeroing in on 50, and I'm obviously like I remember when I first started going. I think it was like I was probably like 18 or 19, and I remember there's a guy there that had like just hit 100, and I was like, oh man, 100, wow. So I'm like, someday it's my goal, I'm like I'm gonna hit 100 someday soon. So it's fun. It's a good thing to do, and whatever. But COVID did put a stop on that. And whenever like you go south or you get a tattoo or something like I got quite a few tattoos. It puts you on pause for a while. So it's I miss the old days where they'd ask you like some like now it's all done on the app, so you just answer all the questions on your questionnaire. I miss where like some like 70-year-old woman would look you dead in your eyes and ask you if you ever had traded money or sex for drugs, or like that. It's like I miss those stark person-to-person questions instead of just the dispassionate machine asking me, which I think is funny. But cool. So you're in Toronto at the Raid Studio, I see. So you're right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Studio today.
Nice.
I just it's a pretty windy. Winter finally blew its way over here.
I'm in Nova Scotia, so it's we're getting it nice and cool up here. It's now finally getting to like the days that are consistently in the minuses, but like -1, -2, it's not crazy.
Yeah, ours is the same way. I grew up in Alberta, so
cold.
Winters over there were different kind of cold too. So
how long were you in Alberta for?
Born and raised. I left for college pretty much.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts in Alberta?
Back for a few years. I was born in Red Deer,
nice.
And then I went to high school in Calgary, and then lived in Calgary a little bit longer, and then came to Toronto, where all the action is.
We've had quite a circuitous route to get there. I just kind of did a little glimpse of your bio when I was waiting to start chatting. But what did your
Well, my wife is also from Nova Scotia, so she's
really?
she's originally from Dartmouth.
Right on.
And her brother lives in Greenwood right now.
Oh yeah, is he in the military?
He was.
That's a big military base in
yeah, for sure.
My cousin lives out that way, not in Greenwood, but close to there. So I always drive through it when I go to visit him, usually once or twice a year. So yeah, right on. Yeah, I'm from Antigonish originally, which is about 2.5 hours from Dartmouth, but I live in Truro now, which is about an hour away. So
yeah, my wife's aunt lives near Truro.
Right on. Nice.
So.
Nice connection.
Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Cool. So what did your folks do?
Typical immigrant story, Chinese restaurant.
Okay.
Yeah, we own a Chinese restaurant in Red Deer. My mom also worked in Scotiabank for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them working in the restaurant didn't really work. We needed
as far as like income or like just getting along with each other.
Well, no, mostly income, but part of it, I'm sure, it was getting along with each other because my dad, and maybe this is just the way I am too, but my dad is very much doesn't like to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a lot of people I know. Yeah. Well, that's the genius of having your own business, right? Because then nobody really can tell you what to do. But I mean, having a spouse is essentially locking in hopefully a lifetime guarantee that you will have someone telling you occasionally what to do. Yeah. So
well, especially when you combine that with your business as well, right? So I mean, they're still together, so it's all good. But
I don't know. I think you gotta be realistic about long-term relationships. Like I love my wife. I don't know if we work together every single day, like really closely, we would, how well that would go. So I don't know, but you never know.
Oh, especially when it's like your thing. You know what I mean?
That's true.
There can be a separation if, it's like, outside of your own passion where you can just do the job. But sometimes, when you're so set on certain things and you have these dreams, it's hard when someone who's maybe on the more pragmatic side or the realistic side of things kind of try to make you see a little bit more clear.
Which, if you think about, is probably like a better recipe for success. If there's like the dreamer and then there's the realistic person. Like I had this conversation with someone who does, like I'm a graphic designer, so I draw and stuff too and do art, but mostly in the commercial side of things. I do comic stuff, but it's just little stuff I do myself. And but I was having a chat with someone who like works for like Sony as in their marketing department that I'm kind of connected with on another thing, and she was saying how her partner's like an accountant. Like a CFO for a company, and my wife is also like a financial controller for a big company out here. And it's like I said, it's kind of like there's like the kite, that's blowing in the wind, and then like the rock that's holding the kite to the earth so it doesn't like blow away and never come back. Or like blow to the ocean or go to the atmosphere or wherever that it will burn up and be destroyed. So it's like you kind of need something tethering you a little bit. I know like the analogy is not perfect, so it sounds like they're weighing you down, but it's a way to like keep you close, keep you close to the earth somewhat for your own safety.
How I see it is they're still letting you fly. Not fly away.
Yeah, exactly. Not into the sun, or
I think it makes sense too, because when I first started doing comics, right, that it alone is a lot of ways a pipe dream, right? And I had a rough time with partnerships early on in my career because you're starting out and you're not making a ton of money, and things just seem so far away at that point. And I don't think it was until I was pretty settled into what I was capable of that I think relationships started to work a little bit more readily, steadily.
Well, you also like I think with time comes like self-realization where I'm what you're capable of, what your limits are, and then a bit of you learn how to work with other people a little better as time goes on, and maybe
that's true.
Maybe figure out the the magic to collaboration without getting bowled over by somebody or getting taken advantage of somebody, you also probably get a little more confident, I suppose, so that someone can't walk over you as well either.
Yeah, no,
Hopefully.
I'm there with you too, and I think with a lot of it, when I think back, even collaboration with like work people,
Mm.
especially in a creative field where I think that you put so much of your self value into your own work that
Mhm.
if someone criticizes your work, or maybe not criticizes, but in every collaboration there's disagreements of how things might look or be
Mm.
or sound or whatever the project might be, and I know that I took things harder then than I do now.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, you take
I
it
think
personally,
now,
you know. You're like
yeah,
yeah.
nowadays I mean, there's stuff, obviously, personal projects where you're like, I just want my voice. I don't want anything else. That's the time to do it. And then there's others where you just need to get the job done, and
Mhm.
collaboration is key to make sure that things go smoothly so everyone gets paid, right?
Yeah, I always find it seems to me like it's the small projects that always are the ones that just turn into nightmares. Like it's like it could be some big like $10,000 project or something where it just goes very smoothly all the way through. But then
Yeah.
like I'm involved with a theater group here in town. I do some acting and a guy asked me to help with this poster, and in the past I've helped him before, and I've been like, I know this is gonna not be an easy, So like he tells me his idea, and I'm like, okay, it's very basic, and I'm like, well, it'd be really cool. We did like this other idea because like when he's explaining the plot of the story to the play to me, and then so I gave him this really cool, stylistic, like beautifully designed kind of fun, well, in my opinion, kind of thing. And and then he's like, oh, I don't know, that guy is like this guy's not that big important of a character, and I'm like, yeah, but like everything's happening in the reflection of the glasses is more, and then he's like,
Yeah.
and then it just turns out to be just sort of a basic, like just four funny looking older women that are like, just straight across the picture, which is all he really wanted. So just I should have just listened in the beginning, but there's this part of you artistically that really wants to try to like flare it up, and then when you get someone that's made your artistic imagination doesn't extend as far as yours in that realm, you're like,
Mhm.
you're just like, oh well, I should have for time I should have just done what he wanted initially, but you try,
I
so
think there's something to be said about there's certain people that, yeah, you're right, that I think can't imagine the possibility of something so being grander or
yeah,
more. Uh, and there's also some people that might be a little bit of afraid of more, you
yeah,
know. So
yeah.
it's hard to say. Everyone's different, but yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people out there that I've worked with that the second that you try to think outside the box, it gets a little hairy for them.
Yeah, it's always like like yeah, like I get what you're saying about the fear of like the unknown or whatever, but it's just always like whenever I do design work for someone too, it's the same difference. Like if I'm doing a logo for someone, and then they're like, I'll send them 6 logos, and I'm like, here's like the first one's usually the one I put the most time, and I really like this one. Second one's like a variation of that one. Third one's something a bit different, but also really unique. Fourth one's kind of plain. The last one is just something I just throw in. I'm like, this is the one I'm just throwing in to give them a 6 option. Hardly any work went into it. It's just whatever. And that's almost 90% of the time the one they go with. So I'm always like,
No, we do
So,
that. We do that with comic book covers too
yeah.
often, where I find that generally the ones they pick are the ones that are like not interesting, at
Mm,
least for me. So what I've tried to learn, and I have the benefit of having experience
mm,
with working with them already, but I only try to give them ones that I want. I
yeah.
don't I want to do. I don't give them ones I don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's funny
So
because there's probably some weird like comic editor thing that unless you're an editor, you probably know that they look for some weird box it ticks that like more comics sell if the guy's looking from the right side than the left or some arbitrary, thing like stat they have, which is what they're looking for that, you don't really know. But it's
sometimes
always
though, and this is maybe a little bit behind, talking behind the
Mhm.
curtain or whatever, but
Hey.
sometimes depending on who's running the show, there's there are some people that have been in the past involved with larger decisions that specifically mandate a certain look as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
So there's that, but there's also like, I don't want to rock the boat and I don't want to get in trouble, so might as well just do the very, you know, basic look that is expected, so you don't rock the boat either way. You know, you don't want to make a mistake. And
I had a conversation, I think, a couple episodes of the show ago with Chris Finoglio, and
Mhm.
he'd mentioned it was one of the funny stories. I think he had a friend who was working on an X-Files comic, and the X-Files comic lost the license to they couldn't use the exact likeness rights of Dave Duchovny and Gillian
Right.
Anderson. So they had to make an X-Files book with those characters, but didn't look exactly like them.
Sure.
So he drew a version of Scully, which, whatever. And he was kicked off the book because like Gillian Anderson's team thought that the not Scully didn't look attractive enough. Like compared to the actual Gillian Anderson. And you're like, well, you can't make it look like her, but you got to make it look kind of enough like her and attractive enough for what they want. Like, it's just really arbitrary, strange stuff that, like, when someone explains to you, you can't help but roll your eyes at. But
Well, that's why I think when I worked on Star Trek,
Mhm.
I really, really appreciated Heather Antos's work as the senior editor on that book, because whenever you're doing licensed work, it is difficult to balance the in between the parent company that own the rights, like for Star Trek, like Paramount or whatever,
Yep.
because they have to approve a lot of these things, and having the right person to explain to them, kind of like, okay, they're going to look kind of like them, but don't expect them to look exactly like them, because we want to encourage style
Mhm.
and at least some level of interest that it goes beyond photo tracing.
Mm.
And she was really, really good at protecting her creators, with being the in-between person in that. So, for that, Heather's like such a good editor in that way, because she really knows how to manage the higher ups.
Mm.
And for me as a creator to get that protection
Yeah.
from editors is really good.
Yeah, it's got to be kind of comforting, when you because I'm sure you've probably had enough over your career that some are better than others, and some just want to get the job done, and some don't care. But
Yeah.
when it's someone that actually goes to bat for you and tries to explain to these people why things are the way they are, like I think everybody
Yeah.
that works in any kind of project management has those sort of issues. We're trying. Someone's like, I want it to go this way, and you're like, well, there's no real way for that to work, but we want it this way,
Yeah.
and it's like, like you need someone that can sort of go to bat for you, but also kind of explain to those people why the things are the way they are and try to get them to understand, or at least bend a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really cool. What was
Mhm.
were comics always the thing for you growing up? Like, did you do you remember when you
Uh,
got into them?
yeah, I mean, for the most part, I grew up in the 90s. I was born
Mhm.
in the 80s, but grew up in the 90s.
Yeah,
And,
me too.
everything, all the stuff that was on TV, I was really interested in, like Turtles and X-Men and Ghostbusters and all the boy stuff, right?
Hmm.
Basically, I was a little too young for like Transformers and GI Joe. I knew
Hmm.
of them, but
Hmm.
but I'm also a little too old for when the Power Rangers came out, and like that was my brother's thing.
Hmm.
And so my brother and I kind of shared a lot of those interests, and because at the time, Turtles, I think Archie had the rights to a lot of the Turtle stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
and Eastman and Laird was putting out a bunch of stuff for the movie Turtles 2 specifically.
Hmm.
uh, a lot of that product I was eating up, so that kind of transitioned me into going to the comic book stores, or well, at the time, they were at supermarkets, so
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I would I would go to gas stations, to 7-Eleven or whatever, and pick up whatever X-Men book or Turtles book that I would see. I didn't become a collector or an avid reader, but I just, whenever I had a little extra money, I would get
Yeah.
whatever one looked cool or whatever. So I had such a broken up comic collection for a long, long time.
It's very weird to
But
me how the comic, like back in the day when I was a kid too, like I was born in '85.
yeah,
So like finding comics in like you could find them in racks and superstores and
yeah,
needs or convenience stores or ever anywhere like that around. But it's weird now that like they're more mainstream than ever. They're less
yeah,
accessible to
yes.
buy in regular places than they ever were. Like you have to go to a comic shop really to buy them now. You're not going to
I
find
think
them
it
on a
was
rack
a lot of
anymore.
it was like a very specific deal. I think
Mm,
it. I don't know the exact history of it, but there were certain deals that through distributing rights through Diamond, and other companies, not just Diamond, but that there was a direct market distributing as opposed to a mass market distributing. I don't know all the rules because like Archie is still at supermarkets and Walmarts
Right.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Those digests.
But yeah, like I would have. That's how I started comics. It's just you go to the corner store and you pick up a couple candies and then pick up an issue of whatever was out on that rack that looked cool, and then from there, you're reading things little by little, but you wanted to know more because you're like, oh man, I don't know what the story's about, but I'm really interested in knowing more. And when I had enough money to buy comics when I was in high school, got my first job, I ended up trying to obviously buy more comics and read more. And I got into lots of stuff in the 2000s. But I was lucky that I got into comics professionally when I was 19.
Oh, really? Wow.
So yeah, my first job was with Aspen Comics, and at Aspen they had DC would send Aspen. This is back in the day. I don't know if they do this anymore, but DC used to send a lot of their contract creators every single thing they printed every month. So you'd get boxes of everything that DC printed.
Wow.
So at Aspen, they would have just boxes of the stuff. So I'd be reading it voraciously. So that was the era of, Batman, No Man's Land.
Oh, yeah.
And from that era on, and then, 52 and a lot of stuff. So I really got into DC at that time in my early 20s, just reading stuff for free, luckily. It just kind of progressed from there. I don't read as much anymore. I think as we all get older, the time that we dedicate to sitting down and reading. I still buy comics.
Me too. They just sit in a pile that I dust off every once in a while and try to read as much as I can. Yeah. I actually recently got the Marvel Unlimited app just to because sometimes when I lie in bed trying to sleep, I'll read a few issues in comics. And I find that's been the most I've been reading lately is that because I can probably get through 4 or 5 issues before I start getting tired enough to put it down. But I've been just bombing through the Peter David Spider-Man 2099, like the initial run.
Nice.
So it's been really fun. Well, how did the Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh,
I was go ahead.
I was just going to say, how did the Aspen Comics job come along? How did you land that?
Well, when I was coming out of high school, I had tried my hand at going to school for animation. But that didn't really work very well. I didn't get. I got a lot of rejection letters from colleges.
Okay.
And it's funny because failed animator tries his hand at comics is basically my origin story. But so when kind of things didn't really work out that way, I still ended up going to. I was very lucky to be accepted to a course in a college for animation for a year. I took that for a year, and it was just a certificate program, but it gave me an idea of, learning a lot of things from building a portfolio to storyboarding and figure drawing, and a lot of really good basics that really helped comics as well. And then so when I finished that, I wasn't able to really get anything going in my career at that point. And I thought to myself that if I were to choose a path, what would it be? And I came to the conclusion that comics was always the thing that I wanted to do. Because even in my early teens in school, I would just write and draw my own comics for fun. What I used to do just for fun was read novels and then pick out a couple pages and just draw them in comic.
Oh wow, that's actually really
practice. Yeah,
that's
learning storytelling.
A really unique way to do that at a young age. That's really cool. I feel like a lot of kids don't have that much insight into thinking about how to train hone their skill, right?
I was lucky to have that kind of mentality early on because often I would find something I was interested in, and it would pique my interest to be like, how do people do that? And then I would rack my brain, try to think of things. Let me see if I can do that. And most of it, when I was 13, 14 was just tracing and copying other things. Like, oh, you're just placing this Joe Mad panel here with Jim Lee panel there. But this is why when I tell young artists, like, it's okay to trace and learn.
Yeah.
You're copying to learn. Obviously, you don't pass it out as your own, but often, to find your own way, you have to like find other people that did it and basically try to copy how they did it.
Yeah.
And then from there, I would, write and draw my own stuff. And I had, before I got to 19, I wrote and drew 3 full issues of comics just myself. A lot of it was practice just to see if I could do it. A lot of it was a hunger for, story ideas and how to get them onto some sort of, format that other people can see.
Was this just a continual comic? Like, was it characters you created that were?
Yeah. Well, funny enough, this I kept that idea, which later I co-created Joyride and utilized that, a lot of those ideas into what Joyride became.
Nice.
So it's never a bad thing to create, and it's never a bad thing to use old ideas and try to polish them up either.
Nice.
But from that, I had a large, or I already by 18, I already had a lot of comic pages to build a portfolio out of. So because of that, I started to go to conventions, and I made a trip to San Diego Comic-Con in 2003, I think it was. And I had shown my portfolio around, and back in the day, what you would do, I don't know if it's still like this, but people would, Marvel, DC, and Aspen, and Top Gun, and all these other companies, they have submission drop-offs, and when you drop it off, they would look over it over the evening, and they would either contact you or post on a list if they wanted to see you. And it's funny because I went to a few other shows before that, which helped me kind of really fine-tune my portfolio as well. So before that, I had gone to a bunch of conventions and asked a bunch of questions about how do people do this and how do people do that, and then make sure that I would have drop-offable small packets of my work. So in San Diego 2003, I didn't know how it really worked. I thought I only had enough money to book one hotel room for one night and one ticket to the Thursday show. And this is back in the day, you could still buy another ticket for the next day, but you can't do that anymore. Yeah. So when I found out that I had to come back tomorrow, I dropped off all my portfolios to all these companies, and I spent the rest of the day trying to look for a hotel. I bought a ticket for the Friday, so the next day, and luckily they still had some one-day tickets, and I spent the rest of the day looking for a hotel. And then when I managed to get one about an hour outside of San Diego. So I drove back in the morning. I couldn't sleep all night. I guess I was nervous. I was like, never done this before, 19-year-old me. And the next day, I actually saw my name up at Marvel. And I was so excited that I have an interview with someone at Marvel. So while I was waiting for my interview, I stopped by Aspen Comics, and then I had asked them to review my portfolio, and Peter Steigerwald and Christina Strain, who are legends in our industry, looked at my stuff, and they showed Mike Turner, and he liked my stuff quite a bit, and they decided to bring me on at the Aspen.
Wow.
Yeah. And then so the funny thing with Marvel was that they were interested as well, but and they even signed me for a contract then, but I never managed to get any work for them for the first 10 years maybe.
Really? Wow. That's
so
wild.
This is why it's like you never know. That's why you always have to kind of look around at a bunch of different places. Like you just might not be ready for them. Like they
Yeah.
might like your stuff, but you just might not be ready. So, I took my shot with Aspen, and they really helped me for the first 5 years of my career, teach me a lot of things, gave me an opportunity to learn on the fly. And, I think they were very patient with me, and they're still great friends of mine now. So, I mean,
That's
I really
awesome.
cherish my time with them.
Michael Turner must have been a really cool guy. I know.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to anybody that mentioned him that they knew him that well on the show. So that's, I mean, for me as a kid growing up, I remember his all of his illustrations for Fathom and all those things that used to keep turning up in Wizard. They'd always have these massive displays of his art. I was always sort of enamored with it. So yeah, I was always I always thought, and seeing his interviews and stuff, he always seemed like a really cool guy. So.
Mike was a very, very generous person. He was a very positive man, which is always great. And he always made everyone feel welcome. So I really appreciated his. It was interesting because, again, I was so young at the time, 19, 20, and he was already, the superstar that he was. And one thing I learned really from him, besides the drawing stuff, was his interactions with the fans were always really, really great. And he always tried to make time for everybody he could. And when I knew him, he was already he was in pain all the time because of the cancer. And he never complained about anything. And he always stayed late to talk and chat and sign and tried to sketch for whoever. And he always gave his time freely. So, I always appreciated that about him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you moved on from Aspen, what was the next step?
Well, this goes back to Mike. When he passed away, there was a couple of years where a lot of projects at Aspen were put on hold, and I totally understood.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, I had the people at Aspen basically said, I don't know when we're going to start back up again. And so I started looking for work. Luckily, a few years prior, I had, and this is even after I got into Aspen, I took an opportunity every time I went to conventions to meet more people. So I had met a few years back a man named Mike Martz, who at the time when I met him was an editor at Marvel for the X-Men, but he had moved to the Bat office, and I had reached out to him asking if it was okay for me to show him some of my work, and if he had something for me, that'd be great. Luckily, he had a short story to test me out on a book called, it was a Batman 80-page giant. It was the Christmas special, which had a bunch of short stories in it. So I did a 5-page, I think it was 5 pages, something like that, of a Christmas story for this character named The Veil. And he said, he told me, he's like, there's no real deadline for this, so just finish it whenever you want to finish it. And I said, well, I mean, maybe this is the way I've always looked at it. I was like, well, I need money now, so if it's okay with you, can I give it to you done next week? And he's like, yeah, sure, no problem. I finished it in a week, and he liked my stuff enough. He said, this is really good for the short amount of time you had it. We have a book that we need a new artist on, that the deadlines are pretty tight, and it's called Red Robin. Do
you've already established yourself as the I can get it done by the deadline guy now.
Yeah.
Now you're locked in. Yeah.
Yeah. So he said, I was like, yeah, at the time I still am. I'm a big Tim Drake fan, and I thought, this is great. Yeah. How long is it? He's like, it's ongoing. I'm like, fantastic. That's the one thing I wanted the most. And then so from then on, luckily Red Robin went for 26 issues, and I got to do almost I think 19 issues of that 26 issue work, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's huge.
That kind of really jump-started my career. So I really appreciate Mike Martz for his he's always supported my work since day one. So
Mm,
him as well really kind of saw something in me that I don't think a lot of other people did.
that's awesome. Why was Tim Drake your Robin of preference?
Well, I mean, he was the Robin at the time of my formative years, I would
Hmm.
say.
Yeah.
Again, born in the '80s, like I was '83.
Hmm.
Tim Drake came out. When did he come out again?
Oh, I remember distinctly. My brother had them when they right around the time in the early '90s when they're doing all those
Yeah.
ridiculous covers. Like everything had holofoils, or they had those
Mhm.
Robin miniseries where like the cover was like a picture and you could pull the bottom down and it would like
Mhm.
kind of animate. Like it was like a thin cover with an insert, and then when you pull it, there was lines across, and when you pulled it down, it would kind of move. And they had
Yeah.
this story with I think it was. Oh God, the guy is the King Snake, the guy with the big snake tattoo on his chest. He had like kind of the blonde hair and he was blind, I think.
I
Something
can't
like that.
remember.
Yeah, it was
Sounds
him and
familiar.
some other woman, and it was like Robin was kind of caught in the middle. And then my
Yeah.
brother had all those the Joker's Wild miniseries, the ones with all
Mhm.
the different little card like on it that was holofoil of Robin and different things. And there was like this is the era of like 1,000 different covers for each cover. So like
Sure.
there was like 9 different Robin covers that my brother had them all because I think he was trying to use they got him with the collector's side of thing. That's like when Batman was out of town. I think Tom Lyle did the art where the Joker escapes from Arkham and Robin's the only one there to stop him. And I remember just like really being enamored with those stories. And I think for the same reason I've always really liked Tim Drake too.
My first introduction to Tim was actually DC versus Marvel
Oh,
crossover,
really? Nice.
where Robin Tim Drake fights Jubilee, and the way he kind of like takes her down,
Yeah.
um, and then from there, the cards, the Marvel vs. DC cards, and then you'd see their profiles, and then I started getting into the Robin books that they had, and his adventures with Spoiler at the time,
Oh, yeah. Right.
uh, and then moving on to again like Stephanie Brown as Robin, and then there's a that whole era of and again, like I said, like this is like post No Man's Land, and Bruce Wayne Fugitive,
Hmm.
and then moving forward from there, a lot of the Tim Drake adventures. You know it was the right time for what type of stories I liked.
Hmm.
And it's a lot of also in the same vein as Ultimate Spider-Man. When
Hmm.
Ultimate Spider-Man first came out, a lot of those stories fit into what type of story I liked
Hmm.
at the time. I was a young person, and
Well,
you
it's kind
know,
of like getting the Bendis because, like, you discover. I don't know. For me, it was like someone put powers in my hand, and I finally got a chance to read that. Actually, a
Mhm,
friend of mine, when I was in high school, I worked at a store that sold comics, and I met a guy that was going to Saint FX, who was a big comic guy. He was my roommate for a few years in Truro. He works for Marvel now, David Cutler.
mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I
you're
know that
familiar.
guy.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I assume the Toronto market is you guys kind of know each other, I assume, a little bit. I've had quite a few people from Toronto on here. But Dave's a great guy. He's the one who handed me Powers, I
Yeah.
think, the first time. I think he introduced me to like a lot of cool stuff like Powers and Metropolitan and a lot of great music too. So
Mhm.
or Transmetropolitan, a lot of that stuff. But yeah, so that was like you get that you see how cool and unique and different powers are. It's like, oh, they can do this with superheroes. Like
Mhm.
Watchmen showed you a bit of that, but now you got like a more modern sensibility where like you're getting like Kevin Smith type dialogue with superhero books. And then you're like, so that sort of opened it up, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, now he's really getting to do it with the real heroes, and that was sort of really eye-opening for
Yeah,
me.
I think also just personally, I think I've always gravitated to characters that when I was you sometimes you read stories at different stages of your life, and you either
Mhm.
really connect with one character, and
Mhm.
as you get older you're like, oh, I actually connect more with that character
Mhm.
now, and that's the interesting thing about just fiction as a whole.
Mhm.
uh
It's also where you are in your life, like, and
yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you know more. Like when I was reading something that was like the Bible of characters that are misunderstood, or like stories that people think they're cool, but they're really, it's like Rick Sanchez or like Rorschach, like you shouldn't idolize these people. They're kind of
No.
broken, messed up people, but people think they're cool because they're pithy and they, do what they want to do. But when you're a kid and you're like, oh, that guy's so cool, he's so tough, and then
Yeah.
you read Watchmen again when you're like 30 and you're like, this guy's a fucking monster. He's
Yeah.
like a racist, a misogynist, like just a lunatic, and you're like, you shouldn't hold this guy in any sort of high standard. But
No.
it's going to be really frustrating for writers when they're like, yeah, like they're going to understand how like broken these people are and how you shouldn't look at them, and then people are like, this guy's so cool, I'm getting a tattoo of him, or I'm sure.
No, for sure. I find that in general, but I mean but that's the beauty of creating characters as a whole, because we as readers, and this is why having the proper dialogue when discussing fiction, I think is important. That it's okay to appreciate these characters and like them and love their stories and different things like that. But each person sees things differently, right? And based on your own experiences, you are projecting a lot of things from your own life to how you see these characters, and that's always, to me, that's always an interesting discussion, because that kind of gives you a glimpse of other people's things. But I've always, I like different characters for different reasons, but I've always felt, and maybe this is why I enjoy creating as a whole, and sometimes why nowadays when I read, watch, or listen to things, or I don't have the same reaction to things, because I'm not just going along for the ride.
Yeah.
I'm breaking down breaking it open, and I like those kind of discussions. But when I do see sometimes when people, obviously fall into dynamics of characters or just the characters themselves and how they do things, and a lot of them take it on themselves, like they are them, or they represent something that they wish they could be, and there's such a connection, and that's awesome. That's what fandom really is how do these stories and characters connect people, and just make them almost see more of themselves and be seen as people say nowadays.
Yeah.
Because even when you go back to Tim Drake, like I when I worked on Tim Drake on Red Robin, I saw myself in him too, because my story of trying to find myself and kind of breaking away from childhood was the exact time that I was working on Red Robin. So that same story kind of mimicked in a lot of ways how I felt about my life.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I guess I never thought about it that way. I get pretty hung up on the other side of it, so it's nice to be reminded about the positive side of that. Like, when you see like some person like idolizing, like every time I see like some woman posting or some guy posting some like Joker and Harley Quinn meme about how their relationship is like, like them, I'm like, oh my God, like, if you're not read a comic or, like seen the books, or you always kind of like just sort of roll your eyes and you're like, okay, so you're both like broken people, and that's like what you're identifying as. Or like, cops that have the Punisher logo on their lapel. It's
a lot of it, to me, a lot of it is it mirrors the kind of social media phenomenon of people posting stuff like, oh, this is my life on vacation, and this is whatever, and none of those are real.
No, you're true. That's true.
People like to fancy themselves as that, so that other people would look at it thinking like, oh, what a great life, I wish I had that life.
Yeah. But I never framed it that it's like a way, and I like that. I think you gave me something I never thought about before, but it was like the way of trying to be seen better by other people by using your fandom or what you love about those things to say like, this kind of represents me or represents an aspect of me. And that's interesting. I really like that. And it sort of like frames it a little better. Like, it's not necessarily, and it also is what part of that sprawling mythos of those characters that they found or discovered that connected with them, and not necessarily like, there's 80 years of Punisher comics. If you read this one comic that had some story that like you liked and that resonated with your life somehow or represented you, to say I love Punisher because of that, that's sort of you looking to be seen in a way. And
Well, it's
Yeah, I
also
totally.
like some people will justifiably see something that others don't, but
Mm.
also miss things that are clearly there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Like I'm a big fan of an example is I'm a big fan of Star Trek, right?
Hmm.
And there's always a misconception of James Kirk because of William Shatner,
Hmm.
right? Where if you watch TOS, a lot of the way the story is that James Kirk was the nerd. You know, if you ever see any episode of people that he knew in the academy,
Hmm.
they were like, you know, he's always the good soldier, the whatever, the person that followed the rules and did everything the right way and studied the hardest. And what we see, because it was written, his personality was written in a very 70s
Yeah.
view of what a charming man would be like.
Hmm.
It comes off as chauvinistic or
Mm.
misogynistic or whatever, and the lens in which we see what that was, what the
Yeah.
norm was at the time, you know, it's different. Even
But
when
that's even shaped further iterations of the character. Like when they did
yeah,
the J.J. Abrams movie, they make him like a rule breaking, like
yeah,
doesn't like the rules, hacks the Kobayashi Maru thing, and does all that sort of thing to win. Like it's funny how you're right. Like it's almost like Shatner's interpretation of it altered
yeah.
the character profoundly into a way that it even changed from him being a rule follower that was just like that to
Well,
a rebel and
obviously, there were episodes where he's chose to go against,
mhm.
you know, the officers. But it's funny that you should say that. Like often, and again, I'm a huge TOS fan,
Mhm.
just Star Trek fan in general. But anyway, I can go on about
Oh
this
no,
stuff.
I like Star Trek too.
A lot of the scenarios you would watch, and he struggled with breaking those rules.
Mhm.
You know, that was the whole thing,
Mhm.
is that he would have to try to make it under, like he'd have to talk to everybody around him, which is why Spock, Kirk, and Bones really worked well together, because often those conversations were him struggling with the idea of what he should do and trying to get the right answers from either McCoy or Spock.
Yeah,
But
that's.
you know,
I
but
remember.
even like say Zap Brannigan, who
Yeah,
you know that was a like a joke about Kirk. Um, Billy West said like it's 90% Shatner, 10% Kirk,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
it's just that's just what
yeah.
popular
With
culture knows
with
him
the
as now.
girdle and all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's super good. I remember as a kid seeing like a comedian making fun of that, and it's funny when you frame it that way because he used to have this thing about how like the new Star Trek has this prime directive, and the
yeah,
old Star Trek didn't seem to care about that. Like Kirk would just like blast in and like through their way and be like, everything you believe is wrong, your religion is wrong, worship
yeah.
me, your bloated space god, like you just like whatever. But even that is really funny. No, that's cool. Yeah, no, I've always been a big Star Trek fan. I've fallen off a little bit last few years, but I've been watching Lower Decks, and
Mhm.
Deep Space Nine was sort of the epitome to me, and I haven't seen anything I've enjoyed as much as that. But that
No, I
was my
agree.
Star Trek.
DS9 was probably the best written overall. Like
Oh yeah,
if I was to combine, you know, like I would argue that TNG has just as many bad episodes as Voyager does.
mhm.
So as a whole, I
Mm.
feel like they're same. Like I like them, I still like them, but there are some bad episodes. A lot of them.
Oh yeah.
DS9 has more of a very solid 7 seasons that you
Yeah.
can enjoy.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, really, after the second one is when it really picks up. Like the third season to the end is kind of when they get into the war.
Yeah,
But the
I mean,
first two have a lot of good
I
stuff
could
too.
do. Yeah, they have a lot of
Yeah,
good stuff, but I
yeah.
could do without the like come along home.
I just talked to I think it was Finoglio I talked to about that episode. I
Yeah,
think it was how we said because he's a big fan of DS9 as well. He worked on he draws the Lower Deck comics I think right now, or he was,
yeah,
and he had said something along those lines that he was like, I even like that episode. He said, I'm like, yeah, it's all right. Like it has its moments. It's kind of it's like it's well the thing is back in the day it was 24 episodes a season, so like
yeah.
there was a
Oh, yeah.
lot of real estate
Filler.
you had to take up, right? So why not throw in some ridiculous fun. Even when they time travel back to the DAS episode and
Oh
RTS
man, that's
episode,
so good. That
yeah,
is
like that
such
one's
a good
great.
episode. Yeah.
It's really cool and well done stuff. It's very unique and interesting. So, yeah, no, it's 100%. A lot of good stuff there. But yeah,
I'm glad that for the most part, DS9 doesn't deal with much time travel.
Not really, no, and
They're
barely
like
the mirror universe
flashing
either. They only do it like once or twice, I think.
yeah.
So, which I always thought was kind of interesting because I always thought I was always sort of enamored with the mirror universe as a kid. I don't know why. I've always liked reality, like parallel universe stuff, and all. I guess now is my time to shine with all the multiverse stuff they're doing in Marvel, and it seems like DC's leaning that way just a little bit to kind of explain why they have so many different versions of their characters running around in movies. But
Yeah.
what was working on the Multiversity book like? Speaking of that, I mean, I'm a huge Grant Morrison fan, so I'd assume that
Well,
must have
this is
been
a funny story too, and
yeah.
this goes on my career and probably why I have longevity in this career. But I
Mhm.
wasn't never supposed to be on that book.
Oh, really?
And this is another story of being the right person at the right time, doing the right thing. So, going back to Red Robin, one of my last editors on that book was Ricky Purdon, and we're about the same age, the two of us, and we actually started our careers pretty similar ages. He was a young guy starting out in Wizard magazine, right? So he's starting to make his way through in editorial in comics, and he made his way to DC Comics about the same time I did. So he was one of the junior assistant editors at the time, and Red Robin was nearing its end. So a lot of times when a book is nearing its end, they would pass it on to junior or younger assistant editors to kind of cut their teeth on. And so we had a working relationship then. And I don't remember exactly the year, but when Multiversity was being kind of put together, around December 20th or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
I get this phone call from Ricky, and he says to me, I really, really need your help. We need to have this Multiversity guidebook story into the printers in the first week of January. But my artist ghosted me, and I don't know what to do. And I said, well, I'm going to my parents' place for Christmas in Vancouver. But, you sound like you really, really have no other option but to call me. So I'll help you out. And I said, give me, and how, just like any office, there's a couple weeks where they're all gone. Right?
Over the holidays.
So he said, I'm going on holidays too, but here's my email and my phone number. If you have any problems, call me. And I'm like, don't worry about it. Just give me all the reference. Give me a file with all the reference, the script, the dates you need things done, and I'll get it done. And I did 17 pages and I handed it all in on January 2nd or whatever, 3rd, all done.
Wow.
I spent the entire Christmas holidays at my parents' kitchen table drawing.
Oh, wow.
These pages.
That's wild.
Yeah, and it got done. So
That's it,
it was by accident, and ever since then, Ricky knew that I would always get the job done, and I was easy to work with. And then so when he became talent scout at Marvel, he was a huge supporter of my work, and really helped me get established finally after all these years at Marvel.
I think sorry, go ahead.
No, even though I have done stuff with Marvel before, like New Warriors and other stuff like that, but sometimes it doesn't work out with whoever you're collaborating with, and not that they forget you, but the project didn't go maybe as successful as they hoped, and you kind of fall by the wayside, and you kind of have to rebuild yourself back up. And I think that's what I did for a lot of my years, is just try to take everything in stride. Things happen. Business is business, and you got to kind of set aside your ego a lot of ways. And if you want to stay in this industry, you I think it's important to be a good collaborator. And
that's a lesson most people, I don't think, don't. And it doesn't, not just comics, in anything. You could be the best whatever industry you're in the world. Like if you're the best artist in the world, but you're difficult to get along with, you're late all the time. Books have to get delayed because of you. Personally, I would rather go to a guy who is like a great artist who does all those things than go to that other guy, because people don't realize how much extra work it causes and how much headaches it causes for
Yeah.
people to be difficult to be around. You can be the best person in the world, but if you're difficult, you're not gonna get as much work as you could or have as great a time as possible. So you're gonna there's a lot of weight given to meeting deadlines, being accessible, and willing to go above and beyond to help people out. Then that people don't account for.
Well,
So
sometimes I don't even think it's above and beyond because it's like the idea. Yeah, I probably work more than I should,
mhm,
but one very easy thing that I try to explain to creators is to be open for communication. Like,
mhm,
let's say, for example, you're an editor and you email me and ask, hey, how are the pages coming? If you have nothing done, or not even nothing, but like, let's say, for example, you have nothing quite ready to show yet. Often there's some creators that get worried and they're like, well, I'm scared because I have nothing to show them, so I'll just ignore the email. And then I'll give them everything on the day that they want it.
yeah.
And
Well, then they're sitting there
the
waiting,
editor
wondering what the
does,
hell's
yeah,
going on. Yeah,
exactly. So
yeah,
so I suggest to them, like, you could just send a quick email, say, I have nothing to show yet.
yeah,
Uh, here's what I'm like, where I'm at.
yeah,
You could say, like, I'm partially done the layouts or whatever, and I could send you just like the stuff that's kind of like on the go, like layouts or roughs or pencils or whatever stage it is. You can even show them a few and say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what it looks like. I'll get more information to you, say Monday or whatever you want to say, and just leave it at that. And usually the editor's like, good, I can sleep
yeah,
like I can
yeah,
get some sleep, not worrying about whether or
yep,
not you're never going to show up again.
yeah,
And that's all you have to do. Just send a quick email, explain that stuff, and then just say, hey, I'll have stuff done for you then.
yeah,
And sometimes people worry about that kind of conversation, and
yeah.
that's not above and beyond.
Yeah.
That's just,
But for many, it is. And that's the thing,
yeah.
right? Like, because I have done projects with people or even work things or acting gigs. Or like one of the side things I do is I'm a professional wrestler. So sometimes even to like plan a wrestling show and like get a wrestler to answer you that he's going to show up or even show up when you think he's going to show up. Like, I'm like, these guys are all guys in their 30s and you're like, or 40s, and you're like, you guys can't answer an email, organize a drive like your children. Like for some people, I'm not saying everybody's the same, but I'm sure any industry has those sort of people, right? That you just can't communicate, or they just would
Yeah.
rather they go into their own little hole and they're afraid to talk to anyone. Then you get an email a month later going, "Oh, hey, sorry, man, I was busy," and it's like you couldn't just send a one sentence answer to say
Yeah.
that, like just say I'm busy, I can't do it, or whatever. Like it's wild to me. I guess because I've
Well, I've
always
said
been a bit of a
to
keener that way. So
Yeah, I've said to a lot of people though, the funny part of it, and it never occurred to me when I first started, but
mm,
the easiest part of my job is actually the drawing part
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
it's all the other stuff that kind of combines
yeah, I know.
into, because you know if you take what we do seriously, you are an entrepreneur, right?
Mm, yeah,
You are your own boss, and you have to kind of treat it like that. So you have to do your taxes properly. You have to make sure to keep your receipts for your equipment and other things like that, for all these kind of things that you never think about when you first start, but as you build a career out of this, well, let's be honest, it starts out as a hobby and you
mm,
want to make money off of it. Um, and it goes, you have to change your mind from hobby, when you can choose to do it whenever you want to I have to do this every day for maybe the rest of my life or whatever, that you kind of have to start looking at it with different eyes.
mm,
And you know, I don't follow these kind of rules as well as I should either. But one thing I also think that really helps is to properly have working hours that you
mm.
stick to.
Yeah,
You
I'm
prepare your body to have those things, and yeah,
I have my own business as well, and yes, so that's a bad problem I have, is that I'm always like, you go do something, you come home, it's like 8 o'clock at night, you're like, oh, I can crank out a few more things to work, and you're like, instead of watching a movie, you're doing something to relax, then you kind of get burnt out. So I got to
I've
get better
actually
at that work
changed
balance.
my lifestyle a little bit in that way, because yeah, I mean, I try to do work hours as well, but I go
Hmm.
well beyond that regardless.
Yes.
But sometimes someone told me this once where it makes a lot of sense, because sometimes as an entrepreneur or a business for self, you do choose your own hours. So I could do, sometimes I do change it up where I do
Yeah.
my relaxing during the day and I work at night. Like I'll go
Yeah.
for a walk when it's nice, or I'll go run groceries or watch a movie. Maybe at 4 p.m. That's when I start, and I work the rest of the evening, and that's
Yeah.
okay too, because I took my day and just kind of reversed it.
Yeah,
And
I've been doing a bit of that too. So like usually it's like I got a lot of running around to do in the day. So I'll
yeah,
go
sure.
if I have a massage appointment or I got to go give blood or something. Now that's like the most relaxing thing, but it's like, it's something.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you get a little bit of time in here and there. So it generally kind of comes out in the wash, but I used to work at an office and do this, and I got so busy I couldn't work at the office anymore, which is fine because I was like, now I'll have way more time. Because I don't have to go to the office 8 hours a day, and then I managed to fill it up really quickly with other stuff. So it's just how it goes.
Oh yeah.
Cool. So the work at Marvel has been pretty consistent since the sign-in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very, very lucky, and I really feel I really appreciate that Marvel has really put me on some really high-profile books. Like from the beginning, when I got the call to do Excalibur for the X-Men relaunch, I couldn't believe that I was part of that team. That I was going to be part of the team that relaunched an entire line of X books. Like that is incredible. And then now to do it yet again, I really appreciate that they gave me the opportunity. Sometimes for a lot of creators, it's hard to, get. I assume it's kind of like wrestling. Like I'm not a huge WWE fan, but I've watched it pretty regularly for a long, long time. And how say, for example, like, Kofi Kingston's a really good example where, he was wrestling for a long time, and to get the chance to compete for the belts finally, everyone that watched him for his career, when he finally won, was just ecstatic, because he just finally, same with like Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
They didn't have the opportunities because they were too small or whatever. The company didn't think that they were marketable. And I think for a lot of artists, and I'm sensitive about that too, that, for probably a large portion of my career, I think there was a lot of people that didn't believe that I was very marketable and didn't want to put me on books that had, the value that I think that we all kind of want to be a part of. And to have people that believe in your work enough that they would put you on stuff that get a lot of eyes on your work, it's really awesome, and I'm really enjoying it right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, like knowing that someone has faith in your abilities, or at least knows you're dependable, knows the work, the output is what they want for your projects. I mean, it's funny because wrestling, you're right. It's an interesting allegory because, the guys like Kofi Kingston or even Daniel Bryan or those are guys, like when they're smaller, you know what I mean? Their work is excellent, but
Yes.
you just and time they go in time and time out on the mid card of the show and do these fantastic matches. And when you almost like inadvertently, without realizing it, they kind of become a bit of an underdog in your eyes. So when they finally get to a level where they're performing on the biggest one and beating Triple H or something for the title at the main event, like that's such a huge thing that it's almost like you're going on the journey with them, right? You're seeing them go from like the newcomer to the learning, and then the pro, and then finally getting that opportunity.
Well, like a really good recent one is obviously Cody Rhodes, and I like them since the Stardust days.
Oh, me too.
I thought he was great, but to see him kind of go to that point, and it was delayed for a few times because of injuries, obviously.
Yeah, and AEW and all that stuff.
Yeah, and but when he finally won, it was like, wow, that's awesome. And,
it's funny because I like, I try not to be too opinionated about anything because you don't want to be a dick. But I remember when like he left, someone asked me what I thought about it, and I was like, I think it's the stupidest thing in the world. I said, like, because when I early on in my wrestling career, I wrestled Lanny Poffo a few times on a tour. The genius there. Who passed away recently, a few years ago. But he, he told me, he's like, if you ever make it anywhere, which I haven't, I mean, I've been out here, but that's fine. And he says, you go to Vince McMahon or something, and he says, I don't want you to be this character. I want you to be that character. I don't want you to wear this color, do that. He goes, you do whatever he wants you to do. you make the money. So I'm like, all right, and then like you watch a guy that's essentially getting to be a ridiculously fun character and do his thing, and then just throw it all away because you want to be this cool wrestler guy. So like I thought it was stupid as hell, but hey, I mean it worked for him. He made something of himself in the character he wanted to be in the way he wanted to be done, and made it so big and so popular. He got to go back. He got to do everything he didn't get to do before, and it's like it's a great story. So,
But that's an interesting allegory too, because like sometimes there's something to be about being a good soldier, and we were talking about being professional.
Oh, you can still fail doing that too, right? So it doesn't mean it's not a recipe for success.
And when I do say all those stories where I said like with Mike Martz or Mike Turner or Ricky Purden, like for them specifically, I did a lot of stuff for them because I knew they had my back, I knew they supported me, and I knew they wanted to give me an opportunity. While others might not do the same. Like when I left DC, I felt the need to, it's not even that I left, but the way after Red Robin kind of happened and in New 52, I was just not part of that discussion. So there's nothing wrong with that. There was just one of those things that just
you can see happened. There's no place for you in what they're doing now. So you got
to So when I moved on, I started to do stuff with. I got the opportunity to work on a book called Cyborg 009, which was a retelling. Cyborg 009 originally was a very popular old post World War II Japanese manga, and they wanted to do an American version of it, and just to have that opportunity to work with that kind of history, as well as with the property in a different country, was amazing. I got to also work on a project with Alyssa Milano on a project called Hacktivist. I also got to.
That's pretty cool.
Create,
that's super cool.
That I co-created with the guys from Hacktivist. I co-created a story called Joyride, which I was telling you about earlier, which I presented it as like a story that I kind of came up with in high school. And we kind of revamped it because a lot of the story was the cusp of the story of Joyride was that Earth became a very xenophobic kind of thing, and they created a giant shield around the world to block.
Where would you come up with such an insane concept, sir?
Well, it's funny that was pre the wall discussion too. This was like 2015 or something.
Oh wow, you're prophetic. You're like the Simpsons. You see it all coming.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I suggest people take a read of that book because that was I think we were pretty ahead of our time. But so the main characters have never seen the sky before because it's like a shield around the Earth that kind of blocks off other things. So the story was about these three teenagers that steal a spaceship and find out what's on the other side. So it's kind of like a coming of age story, but that
sounds like a great movie.
Yeah, I mean, we were trying to pitch it as a TV show, so
or a TV show, or Netflix show or something.
It never came to be, but you never know.
It still could. You never know. There's wild things.
Well, they're coming out with an omnibus in February of all the issues, so go and check that out.
I will. I'm actually going to definitely check that out. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, but so that was the story that I was able to tell, and I'm really proud of it. And that was me breaking off to do my own thing too. So, and then from that, it kind of went different directions. And you never know what kind of comes your way, but like we were saying, you have to have, I think in this industry, to survive long enough, you kind of have a balance of ego and humility. It's good to know what you are capable of, but it's also good to know where, without trying to take out emotion out of it, where you stand with where you are at the moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to leave somewhere to
get what you got to
show people what you can do.
And I think there's a real benefit to and like a lot of these discussions I've had with people where they just like it's, I can't remember what they say, it's like, making it in whatever industry, it's like 1% skill and 99% like being prepared for it. But there's a level of like just being open, right? Like open to opportunities. There's so many people that get closed off or see a definitive way they need their career to go to be successful. But when you're open to whatever comes your way, and you're so open that you can recognize those opportunities as something like, hey, I might not have thought of this, but this might be cool, or I'll learn something from this. And you never know where that'll take you. It could lead, like you said, going to here and then meeting that guy and going to this and linking to that. Like by the end of it, you got a career of, making the right connections at times you didn't think you were doing that, but then it comes back full circle.
Also, the funny thing is that so we a lot of times we start our careers because we're fans of the thing.
Yeah.
And for us to be a fan of the thing, sometimes you have to almost give that fandom up. And I'll say that in a way like this. So if I ask sometimes a newer creator about, what's your dream project or whatever, and they would say certain big name characters, whatever it is. And from my experience, and this is not everyone's experience too, but sometimes you can get exactly what you want, and it's not exactly what you want.
Oh yeah.
Because
for sure.
You might get that book and you might get that character, but say maybe you don't get along with the writer, or the deadlines are not very good, so you can't do the right project that
or even the version of the character they want you to do isn't, they've changed it, it's different, it's not the one you had in mind.
It could be Commissioner Gordon in a mech Batman suit. You're on Batman, but not drawn Batman.
You got mech Batman.
Yeah, so it could be a lot of these kind of things. And I think as time went on, I don't have an ideal project. My ideal project is working with who I want to work with. And it will create a great story regardless. And I think it's just the joy of working with collaborators that you understand, or you're vibing with. I think that as I've gotten older in this industry, that I cherish the most, and I don't even care what we work on anymore. I think we're going to be doing great stuff regardless of what's on it. So
oh wow. Well, I can't think of a better way to leave it. I think that's pretty great. I had two questions for you. One, when I was reading your bio, I had one quick one, which was, what's your favorite karaoke song to sing? I saw you're a karaoke fan, so.
Yeah, I go like a couple times.
Yeah,
a month.
You got a favorite song? What's your go-to?
Oh, it changes all the time, but I'm a big fan of "It's All Coming Back to Me Now" by Celine Dion. Either the Meatloaf version or the Celine Dion version.
I love the Meatloaf. Well, I love both versions, but the Meatloaf version
is great. Yeah. Oh well, for me, it's easier to sing the Meatloaf version.
Yeah,
but
those notes are pretty high if you do the Celine Dion one.
I mean, there's lots. Like I'm Cantonese, like Chinese Cantonese, and I grew up with a lot of Hong Kong stars, like the music. So I have a list of old Cantonese songs too that I really
nice. Like. That's awesome. That's very cool. And I guess the other question is just what's next? Like what's on the horizon for you that you can talk about? I don't want to get you in any trouble.
So I can't talk about most things. There is going to be, some different things in the new year, but honestly, I don't even know. I have to map that out, and I have to make some decisions as well.
Oh, really? Cool. Well,
first time in a while that at least 2025 is a little open. Something will come up, but we'll see.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's exciting. I'm excited to see what it is. I'm looking forward to reading Joyride. That sounds awesome.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, the compilation, the omnibus of the entire series is coming out February. So
awesome. I'll definitely pick up a copy. Right. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Marcus. This is awesome.
No, thanks for having me.
All right, have a great day.
Thank you.
There you have it. My conversation with Marcus Anthony Toe. Great chat, great dude, putting out some amazing work that I suggest you go check out. It's out there, it's on the shelves, and it's fantastic. Big fan of X-Men, getting to work on Excalibur, so of course, go check out that book and dive in. There's some amazing work, really cool stories, and a lot of great stuff happening over at Marvel right now. A lot of big, huge kind of epic stories, a lot of fun little takes on old characters, a lot of shifting kind of things. And Marvel's kind of getting a lot more interesting. Not that it stopped being interesting, but as far as the X-Men world goes, it seems like they're really firing on all cylinders there. Maybe it's to kind of capitalize on the success of X-Men 97, But yeah, they're really having a lot of fun over there and doing some amazing work. So definitely go check it out. Check out the books. Check out your favorite books. Get all up in there. And yeah, one other thing I want to mention, which I forgot to mention earlier, I did mention the Subtastic Book Fair, which is something I hosted at the Commune. And I was very happy to have local book vendors come out, independent booksellers here in Nova Scotia come out and be a part of it. So the Strange Adventures was there from Halifax, which is my comic stop. Novelty was there from Truro, which is a great bookstore, and the Curious Cat from Antigonish, my hometown, also another bookstore which brought some cool stuff. It was a really good time. And one of the books I picked up, I tried to get something from each of them, was Gender Queer, which is a very interesting book that was on the top of the ban list in the States for quite a while. It's not anymore, but it's still on it. In different states, depending where you're at. But it's an autobiography about someone who identifies as E. I think instead of they, it's an A. Instead of he, it's E. And there, it's air. So that's something I hadn't heard about. But I learned a lot reading this book about the experience of asexuality, but also the experience of transgenderism in a way, and also not identifying by any particular gender, non-binary. Yeah, and you always kind of about folks that fall into these categories, about how they don't fit into the regular binary system when it comes to gender, and you just kind of assume, well, that's the way they were made. This book kind of goes a little deeper and sort of explains to you in ways about why exactly physiologically they're like that. And it was interesting because I never really thought about it that way, never really did enough of a deep dive into the subject. I've always kind of been of the mind, whatever works for you works for you. I'm happy for you if it makes you happy. Once again, to quote Sheryl Crow, if it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. So I've always been very of the mind that, hey, I want people to be happy, I want people to be comfortable, I want people to be safe. I think we can all fit in this world together with a little kindness and a little empathy. So I never really did a dive into why exactly, transgender folks, non-binary folks, asexuality, all that stuff, how their actual development works, and how the brain, you can have like, male sex organ, but a female brain. And it's very interesting when they explain that, about how that happens. It's a very natural process. Well, it's not as common as obviously the regular setup, but it's very interesting, and it sheds a lot of light on a complicated subject and gives some insight into people that you may judge without ever knowing them. So I think it's an important book, and I think it's important people read it. I think if you want to try to understand your fellow human a little better, it's a great way to do that. So go check that out. Very cool book. If you're in the States, I'm sure you can find it somewhere, depending what state you're in. If you're in Canada, I'm sure it's readily available. If you're in other countries, I'm sure you can get it as well. But yeah, check it out. It's just because a book's banned in a library or school doesn't mean it's not Ray Bradbury's 451 Fahrenheit 451. You can still get it. You just can't get it in those avenues. So maybe check it out. See what you can find. See what you can get. And yeah, read it. Seriously, it'll give you some insight into the human condition. One that I think needs a little more insight, because people make snap judgments, and especially that book. Like, the fact they banned it is insane. If you read it, there's nothing that bad in it. And I often feel that people, like the politicians and the folks that rally behind these things, are shown a panel out of context or something, and without the full story behind it, don't understand. So, go and read it. It's really good, and it deserves your attention. All right, well, the other thing that deserves your attention is the next episode of this show. So tune in next week. I do have some episodes lined up for recording. I don't know what exactly order they're going to be in. We'll see how it shakes out. But for now, check in next week. And enjoy another fun-filled episode. Go eat some candy canes, get into the Christmas holiday spirit, read some comics, and have a great day. You deserve it. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.